O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf, and people of purified intellect are the drinkers. The milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent, and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. 6 for 6, Shivadas.
6 for 6. You got it, Swami.
Oh. Careful.
You may take me a while, but once I get it, I got it. So we'll go from here.
Oh. Okay. We'll pick up Swami Shivananda's translation and commentary of the Gita here this morning. Dive into these shlokas. So, what's next? We said yesterday. So we've discussed renunciation, and then related to renunciation, action. And what are the components? What are the constituents of action, right? And from there, what is it that motivates towards action, which is this knowledge and the known, the knower, and the knowledge itself. And we've explored now knowledge and what is sattvic knowledge, what is rajasic knowledge, what is tamasic knowledge. Sattvic knowledge again, because that's relevant for this morning's.
Knowledge of the scriptures.
Knowledge of the truth. Knowledge of the truth. That's said to be sattvic knowledge. So scriptures are certainly pointers to the truth. Knowledge that the one is all-pervading here. That all this is the one of the one and within the one. So that's sattvic knowledge. That's the knowledge finally that will save us. So this morning then intellect is discussed, and we've just come from, let's see, knowledge, and then agency, or the agent, which we take to be ego. We could say ego. Ego was defined as the agent earlier. Okay. And here, thou, the threefold division of intellect and firmness, or will, according to the gunas, I declare them as I declare them fully and distinctly. So number 30, the intellect, conscious mind, which knows the path of work and renunciation, what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, fear and fearlessness, bondage and liberation, that intellect is sattvic, pure, O Arjuna. We were reminded this morning, the mudra that Hanuman has here. What is that mudra? What is the mudra called? So look at Hanuman's right hand. What are we seeing? We're seeing that, right? Yeah. And what is that? If you look, you'll see the thumb a little closer, but it's okay. That's the specific mudra. Do you remember the name of it? We'll remember it together. Abhyaya. Abhyaya, yeah. Which is fearlessness. So he's saying, or blessing us with fearlessness. And he's saying in that, nothing to be afraid of, my dear. So he's blessing us with fearlessness. So bhyaya is fear, and abhyaya is fearlessness. So the intellect which knows the difference between the two and knows where they are and what they're rising from. Does that make sense? What is to be done and what ought not to be done. Yes, which knows what is to do and what not to do. The intellect which knows the path of work and renunciation, the relationship between work and renunciation, which knows what is to be renounced. So we're talking about knowledge, but what we're really talking about now is the intellect which knows it. Can you tell the difference? Swami Shivananda speaks to knowledge and intellect, but can you recognize the difference between knowledge and intellect? It's very simple, actually, but just see if you catch it.
Well, the instrument.
The instrument. Instrument or process, faculty. Yeah, very good. And the knowledge is discovered by the intellect, correct? Is it created by the intellect? No, it's discovered by the intellect. And through what, and we'll get there in a moment, and through what is that discovery held on to? How is that discovery held? How is it actualized? How is it lived according to? That's that hand thing again that we were having fun with yesterday morning. Will, yeah. So, which we're coming to in just a second. So, first is describing the pure intellect, which knows what to do, what not to do, which knows about work and renunciation and what's the difference and what is to be renounced. So, in a nutshell, what is to be renounced? We can recap again. You had a lovely discussion when I think it was the morning that I was in Phoenix picking someone up or something like that, very recently. And you picked up, was it Yogananda's translation on the Gita? And you were talking about the first sloka, and that's one that I tuned in and enjoyed that discussion. So, and Yogananda spoke to both samnyasa and tyaga.
Right.
He spoke to both the renunciation of actions which are not to be performed, or self-centered actions. He spoke of that, and he also spoke of tyaga, the renunciation of the fruit.
Right.
And he explored both of them, right? It was a very good, okay. So, and in that there's clarity. So clearly that's knowledge about it, but the intellect that discovers it and chooses to live according to it would be said to be sattvic or pure.
Right.
Okay, very good. And we can read it, but of course what needs to happen is to actually come to understand it, which requires us to live it, to practice it, to live it. Nididhyasan, yes. Okay. And also bondage and liberation. What's the difference between bondage and liberation? What is causing bondage and what is causing liberation? So you can say that intellect is awakened in a way. Yes. When that has been discovered, then that intellect is subject to the light. And that's a sattvic intellect then. Okay. That intellect is sattvic or pure, O Arjuna. So we'll just read one more time and then move on. The intellect which knows the path of work and renunciation, what ought to be done, what ought not to be done, fear and fearlessness, bondage and liberation, that intellect is sattvic or pure. And Swami Shivananda speaks to this knowledge versus intellect. He says knowledge is a vritti, a function or a state of the intellect, whereas intellect is what functions or undergoes the change of state. Even firmness is only a particular vritti or modification of the state of the intellect. So can you tell when intellect becomes firm? So in the past, of course, there would have been firmness in tamas or sattva, which we'll talk about here as well. That by which one wrongly understands dharma, 31, and adharma, and also what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, that intellect, O Arjuna, is rajasic, or passionate. Now, for a moment, we can extol rajas, not denigrate rajas, because at least with the rajasic intellect, there's a vitality in the process, and there's a real capability of discovering what works, what's efficacious, and what's not, what's beneficial and what's not. And there's an interest that comes in terms of once such an intellect discovers that this isn't working, because obviously the goal is still happiness, then it comes to ask questions that are quite beneficial. Swami Shivananda says there's no proper equivalent in English language for the word dharma. Duty, righteousness, virtue, law are very poor translations of the word. And so he gives something. He says that which elevates you and takes you to the goal, i.e. Brahman or self, capital S self, one's own true self, is dharma. That which hurls you down into the dark abyss of ignorance is adharma. What is ordained in the scriptures is dharma. What is prohibited by them is adharma. A rajasic intellect is not able to distinguish between right and wrong, or to understand the difference between righteous and unrighteous actions. So that's embodied, for example, in the war in Eastern Europe and everything leading up to it, not being able to recognize what the difference is between that which leads towards inner peace and that which leads the other direction towards disturbance and more bondage, deeper states of bondage. So you could say self-centered, the self-centered agent underlying the intellectual process and the discovery of knowledge and action itself would be the cause of that, you could say like that. But that shows rajasic intellect in that whole process. Having said that rajasic intellect versus the tamasic, that which enveloped in darkness sees adharma as dharma and all things perverted, that intellect, O Arjuna, is tamasic or dark. So it's not now the inability to tell what's right or what's wrong, but it's actually taking what's right as what's wrong and taking what's wrong as what's right. And we all will know people, including ourselves at different times, that have been in this state or are in this state. So, Swamiji adds some commentary. He says, that intellect which regards righteous acts as evil and considers right things to be false, which treats everything in a contrary sense and looks upon virtues as if they were vices and takes everything that the scriptures declare to be good as entirely wrong, is tamasic. It views all things in a perverted light. And so it can be said that we live in an adharmic time. So it's not so that it's constant, and it's not so that it's everyone, but certainly society, in particular Western society, is adharmic. It honors that which is wrong and denigrates that which is right. But again, right and wrong only means, it only has context in whether it leads one to inner peace and love and bliss, which is the Lord, which is the Absolute, which is the highest. Mother, however we relate, motherhood, that force, which is natural, which is freedom, and that which would be said to be wrong is only that which leads us the opposite direction, towards disturbance, disjointedness, dis-ease, and as evidenced by greed, avarice, hatred, anger, all of this. So, and again, these things are not being judged either. It is Jules, what the soul longs for is only peace, happiness, love, all of these. Peace, happiness, love. But when the mind and the mental faculty sees those to be... Hello, dear.
You're supposed to keep this on the blanket.
Sees those to be achieved through the opposite of the way that they're achieved, then that's said to be tamasic, or completely inverted, perverted. And so modern society, in particular in the West, extols all of the self-centered actions, all of the things about taking care of these imaginary selves, all of the things about the external beauty, nothing about developing the internal beauty. Yes? And so it's said to be adharmic. It's the reverse of that which leads us towards peace. So it's in this time, this is why it's called Kali Yuga, because it's completely perverted, completely reversed. And so, but even within the one individual who's completely gone that direction, they haven't completely, because still that light is there, still the voice is there, and which is why at this time we'll extol Rajas, because at least with Rajas there's the potential of getting out of it. Okay. So tamas, dark, not meaning color dark, of course. And then coming to will. So does that make sense, the discussion on intellect? And for those joining us online as well, we'll check for anyone who wants to ask a question joining us online, you can do now, and we'll check in a few minutes. So now we come to will or firmness. 33. That unwavering firmness by which through yoga the functions of the mind, the life force, and the senses are restrained, that firmness, O Arjuna, is sattvic or pure. So the instinctive behaviors, the sensual interest, all of this, when played out to its extreme, leads us, when we follow it, leads us towards bondage. So when the intellect chooses, I don't have an interest in following these tendencies, which just lead me to suffering, and which just bring suffering to my tribe, to the world, whatever it is, then the intellect chooses, the chooser, no, I'm not doing it. And upon that choice, it's will or firmness, which will allow us to execute it, to do it. And we all have some sort of a battle going on inside, yes? So we choose a particular course of life related to dealing with that and overcoming it. That's the hero's journey, isn't it? Yeah. That is the hero's journey. It's an inner transformation, which comes through the recognition of what are beneficial choices. What's actually beneficial here, what's not beneficial. Therefore, what are the beneficial choices in terms of action and renunciation and knowledge and fear and fearlessness and all of this? What is it? And then, how do I do it? And that's firmness. When you've resolved and you're completely resolved, what does that mean? Even under the penalty of death, even under the greatest pain, Hari, even under the greatest pain, And here's where we will tend to break. A little pain, maybe we say, okay, but then more pain, we say, well, something's wrong. I'm sure that something's wrong. And at what point, and then somebody's got a gun to our head and we say, what do we say?
Wrong.
And that's going to, wrong. There you go. God bless you. And if you can say wrong then, and with the pain, that's strong willpower. That's firmness. Firmness, no matter what happens. And of course, the tests come. And then we eventually end up with exactly the same test that Jesus had in the desert. Because those voices of temptation are also within. And that's just a test. And so he passed the test. He's here. He's with us right now. He's showing us, pick up your cross and follow me. I'll show you what to do. And we all face the same. So, unwavering firmness. Swami Chittananda says, when firmness is awakened in the mind, the activities of the mind, the life force, and the senses are brought under control. The senses are withdrawn into the mind. The prana and the apana pass into the sushumni nada. I remember tests even come in dreams. There were particular issues that I was dealing with. And I had changed the behavior in the waking state. So towards other people, I'll just say that. I changed the behavior in the waking state. So then it would come in the dream to see if I would also restrain it in the dream. I found that very interesting. Very interesting. And it will tell you something. When you come to the place where you're also able to restrain it in the dream, that really is indicative of very strong willpower, of very strong firmness, and clarity in the various states as well. You want to check and see if there are any questions, Shivadas? Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
What's the yogic understanding of dreams?
Well, generally speaking, dreams are astral. So there's physical food and there's astral food. But astral food is food for the mind, like that. But the physical food also, the food that we eat and digest and all of this in the bodies, they have also a physical element in astral, which means they affect the mind. Generally speaking, dreams are mixed up memories, agitated by the state of the mind, or so according to the state of the mind. Nightmares, for example, would be when rajasic, when hot spicy food has been eaten that night, typically nightmares would come. So state of the mind being very much indicated by or facilitated by what we've read during the day, what movies we've watched, what happened during the day, what did we eat, what did we drink, etc., etc. So most dreams are just replays of events, experiences, choices, decisions, etc. from the waking state. But the mind is free to go to other dreamscapes, other places, much more free than in the physical.
Yeah. So it is sometimes going to different, like the astral.
Well, mind is astral. Mind is astral. Mind is always in the astral. So daydreaming will show you that. So, anything?
We do have one question from
What's that?
Shira Mom.
Yes, what's that?
She asks, are there those who never come out of the tamasic state, or does eventually all move towards the light?
No, eventually everyone. The other, just completing on dream jewels, the other part of the yogic understanding, there are from time to time teaching dreams from time to time. that are quite prescient, that are significant, and that you'll be able to draw on in future as well and go back to. There are some of those as well. And you'll generally recognize them. I share a few of them. I share the Wesley Snipes one. So, the dream within the dream within the dream. Ashram eventually, in the universe, of course, there's only benevolent mother, we could say like that, or only benevolent mother, father. There's only that truth, which is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, which is underlying all of these personalities, and all of these personalities are in it, within it as well. And it is intelligence, and it is love. And this factor moves all of us from whatever state we're in through this process of evolution. So, in a way, we could say we don't have a choice, but we have choice. It's the funny thing. So we have choice to keep ourselves stuck and take all of the pain in the world, or finally to move. Okay, so that's sattvic firmness or sattvic will. Now rajasic. But that, O Arjuna, by which on account of attachment and desire for reward, one holds fast to dharma, enjoyment of pleasures and earning of wealth. That firmness, O Arjuna, is rajasic or passionate. So one will even hold on to good behavior in expectation of reward. Even subtle reward, even just a word now and then. So when the willpower is guided towards what do I get, then that's rajasic. Okay? When the firmness is related to an action, and here we'll get stuck too, because they're prescribed and proscribed actions, which are scriptural, which are guidances, which will easily be misunderstood. For example, we can give an example of this. We could say ahimsa. So do not harm in thought, word, or deed. But you know that there are times when you have to do exactly that in order to help someone forward. And now the issue is we'll do it from agency because they're bothering us. And that's very much rajasic. So Kartikeya, when someone comes in and disturbs you and you want to disturb them back, that's born of self-centered agency. So that's rajas. But when someone is genuinely, and this isn't an intellectual thing, you can see it. This is intuitive guidance. But when someone is engaged in actions within your purview that are harmful to themselves and to others, then ahimsa even would have you disturb them in order to help them get past that. So even holding on to, okay, then I'm told not to disturb in thought, word, or deed, so I will just have to observe this situation. That's rajasic firmness. And I'm firm in that. I will do absolutely nothing. In spite of whatever's happening around me, I will do nothing. That's a firmness, yes? But rajasic. Does that make sense? Okay.
And what if, like, you have that feeling, maybe I should do something here, but at the same time, you are disturbed too by it?
Then you should breathe first. You should pray first. You should connect. And you should speak the words with great intent. I do not put myself first. I am not the... And then... and then do your best. But you can't act from your own personal disturbance.
Even if you know that it's helping others too.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like, if they're affecting everyone.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. No, you can't. It's not. That's rajasic. So, but in a way, it's okay because you're learning from rajas. You're learning, but be careful what you do along the way while you're learning. So, some nuance to this. Swamiji adds this commentary. He says, the man of rajasic firmness imagines that he will achieve the threefold aim of life and clings to it passionately. He's desirous of getting the reward of his actions. He endeavors to attain dharma, wealth, and pleasure. The firmness of such a person is rajasic or passionate. And then, 35, that by which a stupid person does not abandon sleep, fear, grief, despair, and also conceit, that firmness, O Arjuna, is tamasic. And here we may see within our personality a holding on firmly to things that we imagine to be beneficial, but haven't really asked the questions, haven't really gone through the process to understand. When we imagine that we are this body, and we're firm in this belief, in this conclusion, then that's a tamasic state. And so the willpower will be firm in, I put this body first. That's what when we say self-love in this time, most of us would think that's what it means, right? So I spa day and all of this, I put this body first, and I'm firm. This comes first. This comes first. Before I do anything else, I have to love myself. And in a way, you could say, well, it's not wrong, except you need to know what yourself means, what it is. But tamasic, inverted, perverted, reverse. Right? I'm not this body. So if I put this body first, and I make this body me, oh my God, do I suffer. Right? You see? Oh my God, do I suffer. Because the body is already in a state of disintegration. So now I've created a no-win scenario. Absolutely no way to win. No way to be happy. No, it's not possible. And now I'm going to blame everyone else for all the things they did. And that's a tamasic knowledge, but also a tamasic firmness and a tamasic intellect, right? Not recognizing, but that won't help me. Right? That won't even help me. That's not self-love. That's self-hatred. Oh, okay. We'll close with that this morning. Any other comments or Jules?
Yeah, I'm just trying to finally solidify my understanding of Dharma because I always in the middle.
Oh, I haven't, dear. So I have not. So go for it. Yes.
Yeah, so what I'm getting from this is that it's anything that leads you toward the light and anything that leads you away is adharmic. And so it's like kind of like the work or duty, the two getting free.
Yes, well, or that which comes naturally in freedom.
So when people say
it's a good way
dharma,
to say.
It's like the right path.
Beneficial path, yeah. Peace Pilgram said this, and she never used the word dharma, but she said, that which leads you towards inner peace is beneficial. And that which leads you away from it is not. And so she actually, in her own very simple way of speaking, she would guide us towards that as the ruler for the way to measure our thoughts and our words and our actions. Now, still, when there's dullness in the mind, and we will hear that okay, it would give me peace if everyone would leave me alone. It would give me peace if everyone would say the right things to me to make me feel good. It would give me peace. So we'll have that idea, but of course that's not what's intended.
So don't people sometimes say like that's like my dharma or that's our dharma? Like it's like specific what takes them to get to inner peace?
So the word dharma, for one, as Swami Chivnanda just said, it's a terribly misunderstood word, and there's not a good direct translation even to English. So when people, generally speaking, when people say my dharma, etc., there's a question as to whether we have an understanding of what that means to begin with. There's some general concepts of it that are helpful, though. Action which leads towards what I imagine to be my happiness, but is not also leading towards the happiness or the fulfillment of all, would be adharmic, for example. So, yeah.
I have an example that could help me.
Please.
What's the dharma of this ashram?
The dharma of this ashram is to serve and to love all. Serve all, love all. That's the dharma.
As long as you use the
But
word.
that's not a particular prescribed action.
No.
Right.
It's a spirit that's wanting to underlay all of the thoughts and words and actions.
Right. An elevated spirit, because that was the word that Swami used there in the commentary, elevation or elevating.
Right.
So that's
Right.
a beautiful example.
Oh, very good. Okay. Thank you. Okay, let's close with final prayers and arati, page 174. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukuneva Bandhanan Mritor Mumshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukuneva Bandhanan Mritor Mumshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukuneva Bandhanan Mritor Mumshiyamam Mritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashanto Makashi Dukhabhak Bhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mritor Ma Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto Thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold Thee in all of these names and forms. Let us serve Thee in all of these names and forms. Let us ever remember Thee. Let us ever sing Thy glories. Let Thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in Thee forever and ever. From below Sakura Shivananda Maharaj, for all the saints and sages of all the traditions.
Jai.